Hey everybody, Chris here for Cosmic Rage, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about just kind of the release schedule and kind of process for episode 2. So for those of you that are maybe a little bit newer to kind of following Cosmic Rage and some of the behind the scenes type stuff, I started it when I was pretty far in episode 1. So if you haven't checked out episode 1, it's about 20 minutes long. And what I did for that one is I broke everything up into chapters, which I've been going back and releasing on YouTube. But what happened is I did everything in phases. So I did like all the drawings. I did all of the once I was done with that, then I moved into like inking and coloring, and then got into doing the 3D and the compositing. And what happened was that I just caught up to kind of technology a little bit. And what I mean by that is I did a lot of the drawing and coloring, like I said, which there's not a lot of wait time, for instance. But when I got into doing the 3D work for the backgrounds and things like that, there was render times and things like that that I just maybe underestimated. But at the same time, I was using my laptop for freelance work, so I wasn't rendering stuff during the day. And it was just kind of setting things up to render at night, and that's assuming that I didn't have a freelance job rendering at night in and of itself. So a lot of that was just kind of a lot of what happened to episode 1 in some of kind of the lag time of getting things done was just kind of things like that, render times and such. The other thing what happened is after I kind of got started into it, that's when I was like, hey, cool. Like I really, I love behind the scenes animation type stuff, seeing how people work, things like that. I'm going to do that for this project. And by the time I kind of was thinking about that, I was pretty far into the process of, I had everything storyboarded. I had, I've gone so much farther. Everything was drawn and inked. So it was kind of just I was doing some 3D work, and it didn't kind of really lend itself to a lot of behind the scenes type stuff in terms of kind of seeing how things progress, why certain decisions were made, things like that. So that's what happened with episode 1, and while I was working on that, the final project was one episode, 20 minutes, and that was kind of it. So I'm changing that, and I really thought about that over the past year since episode 1 was done, about how I could make episode 2 a little bit more interactive, a little bit more, kind of behind the scenes as to what's going on and things like that. So I wanted to spend today to kind of preface episode 1 a little bit, but also give you an idea of how episode 2 is going to go, and how it's going to be released. So episode 2 is pretty much kind of the same format as episode 1. It's planned out to be a longer episode. I don't know in terms of time how long it is. I fit enough content in there to progress the story enough that I thought for episode 2, which I'll get into a little bit more later. But what I want to do for episode 2 in terms of releasing it is I want to work I want to work on the whole episode as a whole in terms of like doing the animatic and getting the VO recorded. So all the lines that went up for the voiceover talent, that's for the whole episode 2. That's not just like the first chapter. But then what I want to do is I want to focus on one of those chapters and get a chapter done, and then move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. So that way, like if I come across something in let's say chapter 2 of episode 2, if something's not working, or I find a better way to do something, I can then kind of incorporate that in later chapters. Whereas opposed to episode 1, when I was finding these things out, I would maybe have to just kind of keep something that maybe I didn't like as much, because I felt like if I changed it or did it a different way, it was going to kind of stand out too much as to other stuff in the episode. So I feel like this way, releasing it in shorter pieces, will not only give you guys more content to look at, and also kind of foster this kind of interaction between what I'm working on and the final product and things like that, But I also feel like just for artistic growth and things like that, that this is going to be a better route where I can incorporate the things that I'm learning and working on down the road. Maybe I figure out a better way to do character animation, and I can then use that going forward, as opposed to, like I said, episode one. If I found something that I could do, I would either then have to go back and do the whole thing, or like I said, just have to kind of leave it the way it is and accept that as something to take going forward and incorporating in the second episode. So, like I said, to boil it all down, episode two, the whole thing's written. It's pretty much all storyboarded. But when I get into doing the animatic and things like that, I'm going to be doing everything in shorter pieces, so you guys can really kind of see a chapter, and we can maybe dig a little bit deeper on a chapter instead of having to cover kind of the whole thing. And like I said, hopefully it gets content in front of you guys sooner, and just kind of helps me as a creator, because one of the most difficult parts of doing episode one was knowing that I wanted to share what I was working on, but I kind of was, like I said, it's kind of in a spot where it kind of didn't make sense. Like, I have all this behind the scenes stuff that I could do, but I was so far into making it, how do I share that? How do I give context to a lot of that stuff that was going on? So, but yeah, and then just getting feedback and stuff like that. Episode one was done, and I got feedback for that, which was great. But it kind of it was a lot of work to get that to get to that point, and I'm hoping that this kind of makes this a little bit more manageable as doing these shorter, maybe minute, 2-minute chapters. And getting that out, and then getting some some feedback and kind of having more interaction, so it's not like, hey, I'm making something, here it is, now I need to go back into the basement under the steps and animate again for a couple of years until I have another thing to show or something, right? So yes, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I'm really excited to share episode 2, and I'm really excited to work with you guys and kind of show everything behind the scenes, and show you how animation works and stuff like that, and share my story. So as always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment. And thank you for checking out the site. The views really make me happy when I see that people are watching this stuff and coming along for the journey. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks again.